I remember the night it all came crashing down. I was standing in the kitchen, the Christmas tree lights glowing behind me. My husband's eyes locked on mine with a hurt so deep that it pierced me like a knife. He had just spoken the words that shattered the illusion I had been hiding behind. "I know you have been seeing someone else." My world froze. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear the rest of what he said. Shame flushed through my body as I realized that everything I thought I was keeping buried had risen to the surface. My betrayal was no longer a secret. It was now a devastating reality. Before I continue, I want to pause for a moment and thank each one of you for being here. To my wonderful subscribers, you are the reason I share these real, raw, and faith-filled stories. And to all my new and returning viewers who have not yet subscribed, I just want to say thank you for watching, and I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It is the fuel that keeps this channel alive. Please share your thoughts in the comments after this short hook, because your words mean more than you know. Now let me take you back to the beginning of this story, the place where I lost myself, but also where God began to write the most unexpected chapter of my life. My name is Rebecca, and I am a 34-year-old wife and mother living in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Texas. On the outside, I had what many people would call a blessed life. I had a husband, Mark, who worked hard to provide for us. We had been married for almost 10 years. Together we had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who filled our home with laughter and chaos. We had a cozy house with a white fence, a golden retriever, and family portraits that made us look like the perfect American dream. But behind the polished smiles and Christmas cards, I was slowly unraveling. You see, marriage is not always the fairy tale you expect it to be. Over the years, Mark became so focused on his career that I often felt invisible. He was not unkind, he was simply exhausted, distracted, and distant. We still attended church together, we prayed with the kids at night, but when the lights went out, I lay awake with a hollow ache in my chest. I craved affection, attention, and a spark I no longer felt. It was during that season of emptiness that temptation slipped in. There was a man from our gym, Jason. He was charming, funny, and he noticed me in a way that made me feel alive again. At first, it was harmless, small talk while walking on the treadmill, sharing laughs about holiday stress, exchanging playlists. But slowly, those conversations deepened. He asked about my dreams, my frustrations, the parts of my life that no one else seemed to see. And I let him in. One cold evening after a particularly lonely day at home, Jason asked me to grab coffee. I knew I should have said no. I knew the danger. But my loneliness drowned out my reason, and I said yes. That cup of coffee led to another meeting, and then another. And before long, I found myself standing at a crossroad between what I knew was right and what my heart desperately craved. I wish I could say I chose wisely, but I did not. The first time I was unfaithful to my husband was a night that will forever be etched into my memory. The guilt was immediate, like fire in my chest. I cried the whole way home, convincing myself it would never happen again. But temptation has a way of whispering lies, telling you that what you are missing is worth the risk. Soon, one night turned into weeks of hidden messages, secret meetings, and stolen moments that I tried to justify in my mind. I became 2 people. The devoted wife and mother that everyone saw, and the broken, restless woman who was betraying everything she once held sacred. The strangest part was how normal life looked on the outside. I still cooked dinner, attended church, decorated the Christmas tree with my children, and kissed my husband goodnight. Yet inside I was drowning in guilt. Every smile felt like a mask, every prayer felt hollow, and every time I looked at my husband, I wondered how much longer I could live with this secret. It was Christmas Eve when the weight of my choices became unbearable. Our house smelled like cinnamon and pine. Stockings were hung by the fireplace, and soft carols played in the background. Mark was sitting by the fire, wrapping the last of the gifts for the kids. I looked at him, his face gentle in the glow of the flames, and I felt sick. This man had loved me, built a life with me, and trusted me. And I was breaking his heart without him even knowing it. But secrets do not stay buried forever. And mine was about to come crashing into the light. Mark had started noticing the late-night texts, the moments when I seemed distracted, the times I lingered at the gym a little too long. He had stayed silent, perhaps hoping he was wrong. But deep down he knew. That night, as the children slept upstairs, he finally looked me in the eye and said the words that made my heart collapse. "I know you have been seeing someone else." I stood frozen, my throat dry, my body trembling. I wanted to deny it, to beg him not to believe his suspicions, but the truth was written all over my face. In that moment, I felt hopeless, ashamed, and utterly lost. That night was the beginning of the breaking. The moment I realized I had not only betrayed my husband, but I had betrayed myself, my children, and most importantly, my God. And yet, as I look back now, it was also the night when God began to uncover his plan for me, one I could not see at the time. The silence that followed my husband's words was louder than any shouting could have been. I had always imagined that if my secret was ever exposed, he would scream, rage, or throw something against the wall. But Mark did none of those things. Instead, he sat there, his eyes steady, his breathing heavy, his hands clenched into fists resting on his knees. His calmness was more terrifying than any storm. My voice cracked as I whispered, "Mark," but I had no words to follow. What could I say? That I was sorry? That I had made a mistake? Nothing I could offer would undo what I had done. He finally spoke, his voice low, almost broken. "How long?" I swallowed hard, my throat burning. "A few months." The words hung in the air like poison. His face twitched, as if every syllable pierced him deeper. He shook his head, leaned back, and looked away. The rejection in his silence was like a blade twisting in my chest. That night, we did not sleep. I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathing heavily beside me. The distance between us was more than physical. It was spiritual, emotional, and invisible, yet painfully real. The next morning was Christmas Day. The children ran into our bedroom with excitement, their voices full of joy, oblivious to the darkness hanging over us. We smiled for them, pretended everything was normal, and unwrapped gifts by the tree. But beneath the laughter was a marriage on the edge of collapse. Every glance from Mark felt heavy with pain, and every hug I gave my children was laced with guilt. After the kids went upstairs to play with their new toys, Mark finally turned to me. His eyes were red, his voice sharp. "Why, Rebecca? Why would you do this to us? To me? To our family?" I broke down. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to explain what I barely understood myself. I felt alone, Mark. I felt invisible. I wanted to feel loved again, noticed again. "I did not mean to hurt you. I never stopped loving you." He cut me off with a bitter laugh. "You never stopped loving me? Do you even hear yourself? You chose him over me, over us. That is not love, Rebecca. That is betrayal." His words echoed in my soul. He was right. Love is not betrayal. Love does not sneak into secret places. Love does not lie. For days, our home became a battlefield of silence and tension. He withdrew into himself, spending long hours at work or locked in his office. I wandered through the house like a ghost, ashamed of every sound I made. At night, I would kneel by the bed after he had fallen asleep and cry out to God. But even my prayers felt empty. One night, I whispered into the darkness, "God, I have destroyed everything. My marriage, my family, my integrity. Please show me what to do." For the first time in weeks, I felt something stir inside me. It was not a solution, not a quick fix, but a quiet reminder. I am still here. That whisper gave me strength, even if only enough to face another day. But Mark's pain was far from healed. One evening, he came home late, his eyes tired and his shoulders slumped. He looked at me and said words that nearly destroyed me. "I do not know if I can forgive you. I do not know if I can ever look at you the same way again." The reality hit me like a wave. Forgiveness was not automatic. Trust was not going to magically reappear. I had broken something sacred, and the pieces were scattered beyond recognition. For the next several weeks, we lived like strangers under the same roof. We exchanged necessary words about the children, about bills, about schedules, but there was no warmth, no laughter, no intimacy. It was a cold, barren wasteland of a marriage. But it was in that wilderness that God began to work. I started reading the Psalms late at night, desperate for comfort. David's cries of despair and pleas for mercy became my own. I read, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me." And I wept, because I needed that clean heart more than anything. Meanwhile, Mark was fighting his own battle. I later learned that he would sit in his car outside our house, wrestling with the decision to leave or to stay. He told me later that the only thing that stopped him was the thought of our children, and a small stubborn voice inside him that whispered, "Do not give up yet." That voice was not his own. It was God planting a seed of hope, even in the ashes. One Sunday morning after weeks of tension, Mark surprised me. He said, "Get the kids ready. We are going to church." I felt my heart leap. We had not gone since everything happened. Sitting in that sanctuary, I felt exposed. The songs about grace and forgiveness pierced me. The sermon about redemption made me sob silently into my hands. Mark sat rigid beside me, but I noticed his lips moving as he prayed. Something was shifting. That afternoon, for the first time since my confession, he spoke to me without anger. His voice was still heavy but softer. "Rebecca, I do not know if I can forgive you right now, but I also do not want to throw away our family. If there is any chance this can be repaired, I want to try. But it is going to take time. And it is going to take God." Those words were not a solution, but they were hope. For the first time, I saw a faint glimmer of light in the darkness. I realized then that my story was not just about failure, it was about what God could do with brokenness. And little did I know, the most surprising part of God's plan was still ahead. When Mark said we would try, I thought it meant long talks and quick healing. I was wrong. Trying meant walking through fire. It meant facing uncomfortable truths, raw emotions, and the kind of silence that made me question if we were even moving forward. There were nights when I would reach for him in bed, and he would roll away. There were mornings when he would leave for work without a goodbye. Every rejection was another reminder of the wound I had created. I carried shame like a weight on my chest, but I kept praying. Even when the words felt dry, even when it seemed like nothing was changing, I kept whispering, "God, please heal this. Please heal us." Weeks turned into months. Slowly, so slowly, it began to shift. Started with small things. Mark asking if I wanted coffee when he made his. Him texting me during the day to check on the kids. A laugh that escaped during a silly TV show. They were tiny cracks in the wall between us, but they gave me hope. One evening, I found him sitting in the living room with his Bible open. I froze in the doorway. He looked up and for the first time in a long time, I saw softness in his eyes. "I read something today," he said quietly. Ephesians 4 verse 32. "Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, as God in Christ forgave you." I cannot lie, Rebecca. Forgiveness feels impossible right now, but God keeps reminding me that He forgave me when I did not deserve it. So if He could forgive me, then maybe I can find the strength to forgive you. I burst into tears. I knelt in front of him, holding his hands, sobbing. "I do not deserve it, Mark. But I will spend the rest of my life proving to you that I am yours and only yours." That night, we prayed together for the first time since everything had happened. His prayer was halting, broken but powerful. "God, we are a mess. But if you can restore us, we want to be restored. We cannot do this without you." That moment was the beginning of true healing. The journey was not quick. Trust does not return overnight. We sought counseling with a Christian marriage counselor, who helped us untangle years of unspoken frustrations. I had to face my own emptiness, the reason I had sought validation outside my marriage. Mark had to face his own walls of distance and silence that had made me feel invisible. It was not about blaming each other, but about building something new. We learned to talk again, really talk. We learned to listen without interrupting, to speak without lashing out. We learned to pray together not only when we were desperate, but also in ordinary moments. One evening months later, as we tucked our children into bed, Mark wrapped his arm around me and whispered, "I almost walked away, but now I thank God I stayed. Because what we are building now, it feels stronger than what we ever had before." I smiled through tears, because I knew he was right. Looking back, I see now what I could not see in the middle of it all. My betrayal was my lowest point, my darkest valley. But God did not abandon me there. Instead, He used it to strip away my pride, to humble me, to remind me that real love is not about feelings or fleeting attention. It is about commitment, sacrifice, and grace. I had been hopeless, but God had a plan I could not see. A plan to rebuild my marriage. A plan to show my children what forgiveness looks like. A plan to transform my shame into a testimony. Today, Mark and I are not perfect. We still argue. We still face stress. But now we fight together instead of against each other. And every time we stumble, we go back to the one who carried us through the fire. To anyone listening who feels hopeless right now, whether in your marriage, your family, or your faith, I want you to hear this. God is not finished with you. You may feel like everything is broken beyond repair, but God specializes in restoration. What you see as the end might just be the beginning of something new. Do not give up. Do not let shame convince you that you are beyond forgiveness. Do not let pain convince you that healing is impossible. If God could take my betrayal and turn it into beauty, He can do the same for you. Trust Him. Surrender your pain to Him. Wait for His plan, even when you cannot see it. Because I promise you this. You may be hopeless right now, but God already has a plan.